You're listening to the MAMIL Sports Cycling Podcast, bringing you the latest news from the world of cycling and the global MAMIL Sports community.
Welcome. This is the very first MAMIL Sports podcast. We thought we'd have a go at putting a podcast together for you. The Facebook and the Instagram and the website pages have been running for a while now. So we thought, as we are nearing or just over 30,000 people globally on the Facebook page, we'd have a crack at a podcast, and you can get to know us a bit better, and hopefully in time we can get to know you guys more as well. So my name's Tom, and I set up MAMIL Sports in, I guess, kind of late 2013. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Pete and Bryan. But before I introduce them, I just thought I'd tell you very quickly what MAMIL Sports was set up to achieve. It's really just a positive global cycling and, I guess, let's just say kind of tri-sports and running and kind of fitness community for people, I guess 35-ish, plus, 40s plus, who are just really into, cycling and keeping healthy, or being, just getting out into the great outdoors and enjoying time on the bike, with their friends. And it's just really a very inclusive community for everybody to, share their pictures and rides and stories and achievements globally. So that's MAMIL Sports in a nutshell. And please do, if you haven't already, check out the website, mamilsports.com. Okay, so as I said, I am joined by my two co-hosts. We'll go to Pete first, who is over in Geneva with a beer, I believe. Pete, how are you doing?
Evening. Yes, I do have a beer, a Corona, nothing but the best. Yeah, so in Geneva, where I live, just back from a weekend. I was in La Provence, so I got to ride Mont Ventoux for the third time this year.
Did that on your mountain bike though, didn't you? You didn't do that on a road bike this time.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you on a mountain bike, it was a hell of a lot harder. It was unbelievably hard. So, I think when we talk about it a little bit later, but, it's this time of the year coming in the transition from having done some sportives and things. I like to come into this time of year, this autumn time of the year, and just muck about, basically do a bit of mountain biking, try some other stuff. In terms of background about me, you'll hear more about Bryan, who's got more of a serious background. I'm a wannabe weekend warrior. I've done some pretty big sportives like the Haute Route Alps and Etape du Tour. Next year will be my fifth one, coincidentally going almost past my doorstep, about 30 kilometers away in Annecy. But probably
the Haute Route though, that's those other sportives are pretty serious, but they're accessible. But the Haute Route is accessible as well, but it's a very serious undertaking. That's something you really need to train for.
You know what? It's probably for me. I would say that was probably my holy grail to a certain extent. I'm not sure I'll do it again, but it's like an Ironman or something. It's just one of those mental things where you just have to become completely devoted to it.
If I had the time, I'd love to do it. I really would.
That's the struggle, is finding the time. But Bryan, the next man, he's the man that can make the most of your time when it comes to training.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Pete. So, Bryan, over to you. And you're in sunny Northern Ireland, just outside of Belfast.
Yeah, that's right.
Head coach of cyclecoachinguk.com, so professional bike coach and former technician at Chain Reaction, I believe, and had your own bike shop for a little bit. So introduce yourself to the listener.
Welcome, guys. Glad to be here on the first podcast. I suppose, I got into cycling quite late. I didn't do anything competitive, through school and that. It was more just rugby and football and everything. But my dad was I think he was Northern Ireland road race champion, so cycling was always in our family. But I suppose he never really wished racing on me because of how hard it was. I kind of found it myself, if you know what I mean. So I took his I think the Cycle to Work scheme came out, which is probably one of the reasons why MAMIL Sports is growing so big, is because everyone has access, or a easier, a cheaper access to bikes now. So I ended up taking his bike and just started training, and I got wind of Dad had raced the RAS, or the Ampost RAS, which is a multi-day stage race in Ireland, and for guys over here,
8 days,
and for guys and amateurs riding their bike in Ireland, that's the Tour de France, basically. So, I trained in over about 2.5-3 years after working with a coach, managed to get to A1. And I think I rid the RAS the first year as a Cat 2 for Chain Reaction Cycles, and I think I was last. It was a big, it was a big eye-opener. I think we were racing, Martin Irvine was in that race, who was, he's world champion track cyclist, and a few of the other guys that are riding now for Pro Conti team from Ireland, Aqua Blue Sports. So, the quality in the race is huge, but the dynamic basically is that you have professionals riding along with amateurs, so it's a real big challenge and something that any sort of aspiring racer really needs to do. So I done that, and then after a couple of years I took on coaching a few guys and basically just grew that over. I've been coaching now about 4 years. From the website is cyclecoachinguk.com, and I think I've grew my client list over the past few years, and I've noticed now, you can't coach everyone because you only have you have a finite amount of time. So been developing sort of a non-custom approach where people can log on to the members forum and have training plans and nutritional and strength and conditioning guidance to sort of guide them, along with videos, and obviously this podcast will be a real good sort of source of information, hopefully, for a lot of the guys listening who are looking training tips and stuff. So yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah,
hopefully we can draw on your considerable knowledge about training and improvement and nutrition and technical parts of the bike as well, because I know that ever since I found out your background, I've been pestering you numerous times a year about various bits and pieces that I've been trying to buy.
Yeah, the technical aspect. Yeah, the technical aspect of it is such a big thing now in cycling. There's so many different elements to the bike, and it can be daunting. Yeah, it can be daunting for some people.
You're still looking for that left-handed hammer.
Sorry, Pete, what was that?
You're still trying to buy that left-handed hammer.
Very true. And there's new stuff coming out all the time, so having someone you can rely on for technical advice is obviously handy.
Good stuff. All right. Well, good to have you on board. So, quick bit about me then. I would say that I am a weekend warrior as well. I think throughout my 20s, I was very fit for a period, and working in London latterly. You
still have those photographs on Facebook, don't you?
Yeah, I do. But yeah, no, I guess my kind of fitness and my weight has kind of yo-yoed over the years. I'm a solid, I would say, 90 kilogram plus cyclist, but I've got a decent amount of endurance as well. I've got Pete to thank actually for the cycling that I've done over recent years, and I've done 3 etaps with you, Pete, which have been a pleasure, especially the first one in 2013 when I comprehensively beat you, which has never been repeated, and I suspect will never be repeated again. But I've done numerous triathlons, some half Ironmans as well, and just really enjoy it, and hoping to keep my fitness up well into my 40s and beyond. Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction to the team. What we're going to do really is chat about a few things today, really. We're going to talk about a bit of a news roundup. The World Tour Series has finished, the cycling season is over, but there's a little bit that went on in the last kind of week or two. Obviously the Tour de France and the Etape du Tour as well. The Etape du Tour routes have been announced. So some of you out there might be doing that for the first time or second time, whatever. And we've got a decent amount of experience in that area. So we'll give you a little bit of a run through about what to expect, etc. Then we are going to have the kind of a main chunk towards the end of the podcast around training. What do we do in the off season? That the kind of sportives are over. The weather's changing. How do we keep up our motivation and make sure that we keep ticking over Christmas, because it is difficult, certainly if you're me and you've been working in London and there's drinks every night after work. That is basically my problem, but we'll come on to that later. All right, so Pete, I think you're going to give us a little bit of a run through about the news, really, what's happening in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so season's over for me.
What did you do this year, by the way? Just to very very quickly.
In terms of events.
Yeah.
So I did the Marmot and I did the Etape. And then I did an aborted attempt at Rock des Alpes, which is a mountain bike race, which I abandoned after halfway. Whenever I realised I didn't have the technical skills to descend and was making a fool of myself.
Okay.
So that's why. So I definitely have unfinished business with Rock des Alpes and La Clusaz. That's for next year. But yeah, I did.
Was that was on your mountain bike, wasn't it?
That was that was a bit foolish, to be honest with you, because I kind of got a nice mountain bike and thought, I've done loads of like biking in terms of road biking, so I should be able to transfer this across. And from an endurance point of view, that's fine. But then there was just lots of hairy technical descents where I just was like, I'm not enjoying this. I'm going to come off the side of a cliff. I'm going to smash myself against some boulders. So I abandoned that and then did the Marmot, which is I think it's the oldest sportif. It's been going since the 80s. It's the same route in France.
I did that with you in 2014, although you were very ill, but still very kindly gave me a lift.
Yeah, that's the year that you did it, and I lay in bed being sick but watched the Tour de France having that great stage in Yorkshire. So there was something at least I enjoyed from that day.
So you've been very, very active this season. Good stuff. All right. Well, yeah. So what's been going on in the last week or two?
Well, the season's, I mean, for a start, I consider the end of the season to be the Giro de Lombardia. So once Lombardy's done,
race of the fallen leaves.
For me, the season's done. The guys were in doing some kind of, a race in Japan. No offense.
In China, weren't they?
So the news is pretty much, grown to a halt. There's been a couple of things such as, the Bradley Wiggins famous Jiffy bag, takes another casualty.
Bubbles on.
With the resignation of, Dr. Richard Freeman. I don't want to say anything that's could be considered slanderous. But, this is a pretty murky story, and I get the feeling that there's still more to unfold in this. And I think there's an ongoing investigation, and I think we all welcome its conclusion. We're all looking forward to getting to the bottom of, what's been going on.
Yeah, because I think a week before there was the departure of the
hiker,
the GB men's endurance coach.
Yeah, he was Wiggins' coach for the R record as well.
I know that there was a little bit of maybe revolt in the camp. I don't think he got on with everybody. Certainly didn't get on with Mark Cavendish. The other main thing really is the Tour de France, isn't it? The route that was announced.
Yeah. So that was last Tuesday. I think it was, last Tuesday. I actually sat at work as a proper mammal, pretending to type away on my keyboard and work, but actually I was secretly listening to and paying full attention to them release the Tour de France route, and it's a very interesting route actually.
Marketed as an ultra dynamic route, which I guess means more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, the reasons why I think it's interesting is as interesting as a road race can be. One, they've changed the surfaces which people are riding on, so they're going to go back to the pavé in Roubaix. They've also, for the first time, got themselves a section of an unpaved road, and that's the stage that actually be the Etape du Tour stage 10 on the Plateau de Glières. Yeah. Although I say innovation and unpaved road. Whenever you look at those kind of photographs, black and white photographs from back in the day, with the guys with 2 bottles of milk on their front handlebars, those roads, and a cigarette in their mouths, those roads also look pretty.
Well, if they can do it, if they can do it, we can do it.
Yeah, I don't think they were stressing about could their carbon wheels take it, or what kind of width tire did they have to take. They were just cracking on it.
Where the broom wagon was.
Yeah, no. So there's that. They have also introduced the team time trial. It's been a number of years since the team time trials there, so that's interesting. They have reduced the number of riders in each team by 1.
So we've gone down from 9 to 8. 98. And there's 176 riders in total in the peloton.
Yeah, and then they have introduced some pretty interesting stages, like stage 17 I think it is actually, which is less than 70 kilometers long. It's 65 kilometers long in fact, and it's basically
65k.
It's basically a pure time trial, pure mountain stage time trial.
It looks brutal. It really does. I mean, it's the Col de Portet. I mean, has anyone ridden that?
Stage?
I might have done in the Pyrenees.
Is the stage only 65k long?
Yes, 17 kilometers, and it's just straight up and down. They've created stages like this, with less riders in the team, which is, I guess, I don't know if this is to try and crack the Sky effect. Let's throw in some dodgy surfaces. Let's throw in some, short stages which should be almost impossible to control, and see what can happen. So
that stage, actually, stage 17 is 1,419 meters height gain.
It's
8.3% average with a maximum of 12.5%. I think that's the those are the stats. So it's quite cheeky.
It's really an interesting tour from the point of view of if you look at last year, you saw Cattell when I can't remember what it was, 4 or 5 stages, and you had a bunch of those kind of stages where let's be honest, you basically you recorded it and then you watched like the last 10-20k because you knew what was going to happen. So this year they've created a bunch of stages where people are going to want to watch the entire section of the pavé in case somebody crashes. They're going to want to watch the entire section when they go over the unpaved road in case there's a puncture, an incident which affects the race. The 65 kilometer short stage 17, you'll watch that from start to finish. So I think they're making some really compelling viewing. And also the Tour de France is a week later this year as well, so that it doesn't overlap with the World Cup.
Part of it does actually.
Oh, does it?
And it's the stage 9, which is the Paris-Roubaix, which is the elements of that of that circuit. But stage 9 on July the 15th is actually on the same day as the World Cup. But I don't think they.
Don't worry, England will be long out of the World Cup at that stage. There'll be nothing for your listeners to know.
I'm Welsh, so I don't worry about England. look, I think it's a good thing because we're all really keen on a very competitive Tour de France, and also as well, I mean, there's lots of other riders out there. I think one of the great things about this Tour de France that's just gone is that quite a lot of high-profile riders didn't complete the Tour de France. And there were a lot of really exciting, new riders that kind of emerged. Like Landa and Martin had a good tour as well. But it's not going to be a case of just handing the fifth yellow jersey to Chris Froome. He's got work to do with obviously Tom Dumoulin looking good as well.
And that's the big question for me, is because Dumoulin still says he's being cagey. He wants to see the routes of the other Grand Tours be released before he kind of commits to what event he does.
He's still young. He didn't race the Tour de France last year. He crashed out on stage 17 or whatever the year before. I want him to ride it, but it might not be in his kind of game plan really. But it would be great to see him ride it, wouldn't it?
He's also got a good team for the Sunweb, or also a good team for the Team Time Trial. So I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise that he's the rider that could dethrone Froome, because if you look at them, they're very similar. They're broadly the same height. He's maybe a kilo or two heavier. He's great on the time trial. He's a good climber. So I mean, he's the heir to Froome.
Okay, yeah. So which sections of the Tour do you think are going to be most critical?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few really interesting stages. To say they've got, of course, the stage where they go back across the Pavé in Roubaix. That's going to be extremely interesting to see what happens. They were there a couple of years ago. It was wet and there was havoc. Froome fell, and he had already hurt himself, but that was the end of him out of the Tour. That was a section which nibbly just everyone alive, and it completely changed the entire dynamic of the race. We've got a Team Time Trial, which is a number of years since that has appeared. That's in Team 3, and that's an event in which you can lose a bunch of time if your team sucks at Team Time Trialing. You can remember the days whenever it was US Postal or Team Discovery, when those guys had that down to an art, and it was just like a train.
Do you think there's going to be a lot of GC riders that are doing the Paris-Roubaix next year as a bit of a recce?
Potentially they might go along and do it. I mean, look, it's a funny one, because they're so kind of protective of their training schedule pretty early in the season. They might not want to go there because they don't want to get sick or any accident happens. Likes of Froome, he probably wants to stay somewhere nice and warm and looking after his condition.
I think he'll do it.
I don't know. I think he'll for sure he'll recce the section, but he'll probably just do it with the team outside of the context of Paris-Roubaix, which is just a nuts, crazy hard race.
It's a lot of distance quite early on in the year, isn't it? 257 kilometres.
I mean, to be honest with you, I've looked at Paris-Roubaix, I've looked at Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the Sportifs, and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, I think is 300 kilometers or close to 300 kilometers. It's for a MAMIL, I think it's a very, very hard event to do, almost impossible, because
come on,
seriously, because I mean, I disagree. For a MAMIL, these events that are, say, even the Haute Trip, which I did, which was it start.
You're a MAMIL, Pete.
No, but it was in the end of August. That give you plenty of time throughout the year to get in that form. It's just really difficult, I think, for a MAMIL to get yourself in shape whenever you're going to have to basically go so hard during the winter and train, because otherwise you end up in the Bay time when it is very, very early spring. How do you build up enough endurance to do 300 km?
Do you know the thing is, but say you did want to do something like that, which is early season. There's a client I had on I think it was Paris-Roubaix, and you basically just switch your training around. You're doing the longer stuff maybe even in the summer, and you start getting harder and harder over the winter, and sometimes doing harder training in the winter is easier because it's on the you're indoors all the time, and it can be quite a lot shorter. So but he did say,
do your wife and kids still know who you are?
Well,
do your husband and kids still know who you are?
that is the thing. But no, he done it, and he said it was absolutely crazy. Just I think he had maybe 3 or 4 punctures. He hired a bike, which he said he would never do again. Bring your own bike for things like that, even if it is a bit of an extra cost. Just pedals and setup and everything when you're on unfamiliar roads just doesn't it doesn't give for the enjoyable experience you're sort of after.
It's something that I'd love to do. I'd love to do Paris-Roubaix or a Spring Classic, but yeah, it is a massive ask to kind of peak, if you like, as an amateur rider at that time of the year.
Well, you're lucky, Tom. I'll be able to sort you out for that. You're in the right place. If you want to do it, you just have to say.
Yeah, I mean, thanks very much. If I'm still in the UK, yeah. So who do we think is going to be the riders that are going to challenge Froome? Who are the main challengers?
I mean, it's not even fully clear who's committing, who's signing on to it. I mean, I'm just waiting to hear if Dumoulin's doing it or not. For me, Dumoulin's the most exciting figure because, he's got a good team. They can perform well on the team time trial. Froome is getting older. You would say that Froome is probably past his peak, so he's, either prolonging a bit of a plateau or he's on the down, whereas, Dumoulin's on the way up and, he can time trial, he can climb. He's the same sort of height as Froome. He's about the same weight, but he'll probably drop another kilo or two potentially, and across the next, 5 years. And, I expect once he kicks in and starts winning, I think he'll dominate for the next sort of 4 or 5 years as well. So we'll see. Another one who I'm interested to take an eye on is Martin. Dan Martin had a great year last year. If he hadn't been completely, kiboshed by Port, crashing in that horrible descent, he would have been, you just look at the time he lost, he would have been down Froome's neck.
Didn't he break a few vertebrae?
Yeah, he did. I think he actually broke the same vertebrae that I did whenever I had a crash in Dublin. It's kind of like the one on the neck.
You broke your neck, didn't you, when you were cycling,
Yeah,
actually? We should probably talk about that another day. Injuries.
But yeah.
I don't think you'd have recovered as quickly as you did at your age now.
Yeah, no, and I wouldn't have got back on the bike as quick as I did, or as quick as he did. So yeah, I want to see what he does. He's moved to one of the Arab teams to UAE. So we'll have to see how he gets on because he's sharing responsibilities with Aru. So we'll have to see how he and Aru divide up who does what in terms of Grand Tours. But hopefully Aru does the Giro and Martin has a good crack and a good supported run at the Tour. How about you, Brian? Who do you fancy from a coaching point of view?
I don't know. I would say, I'll just stick with Froome, like Dan Martin and all in terms of time trial. I just can't see him ever win the Grand Tour. Same with Katana. In terms of the Tour de France, when you're up against Dumoulin and Chris Froome, if there's a long time trial in it, they're just going to dominate it. But I like the way they're putting in cobbles or, could trip people up, or even that, was it stage 17 you said about? So there's a few, there's a few interesting things in it that might sort of the scales a wee bit, but at the minute, probably, I'd say even for Froome at 32, I think he's still got another good few years in him.
I think the bookies had a quick look before we sat down to do this, but challenges are Dumoulin, Port, Quintana, Landa and Uran.
Port's cursed, and although talented, seems doomed never to succeed.
Well, let's hope he enjoys some success, Pete. Let's hope it's not as tragic as that. But that was a horrible, horrible crash, wasn't it? There was a couple actually at the Lombarda, a couple of horror smashes there as well. So get well, everyone.
Jan Bakelant, who I read actually, I think it was just today actually. I don't know where he said it or whether
be out for a while,
perhaps forever. It could be the end of his career.
Let's hope not. Okay, moving on then. So obviously, as part of the Tour de France, which is very applicable to mammals, is the Etape du Tour. Now, other sportives are available, and we're not in any way affiliated to the Etape du Tour, but we have done it.
But not the Marmotte, because they're doing it the same day, which is crazy.
Oh, the Marmotte, yeah. We've done both multiple times. Yeah, so the Etape du Tour is a stage of the Tour de France which is open to amateur riders, and I think there's still places available at the time of recording this, but normally they have 15,000 riders, I believe, every year, and it is an alpine stage or a Pyrenees stage of the Tour de France, which is typically raced by the amateurs a week or so before the main tour passes through. But closed roads, the villagers come out, there's cowbells, the atmosphere is fantastic. If you get a sunny day, really, it's probably one of the best days on a bike you can spend in the Alps, I would say. But yeah, Pete, you pretty much live on top of the course this year, so why don't you give us a little overview of that?
Yeah, we're going back to Annecy, which is the second time in 5 years. That's where the Etape was in 2012.
Was it 12 or 13?
It was 12. It was 2012 because I moved to Geneva in 2011 and was 100 kilos, and then set myself the challenge of riding the Etape the following year. So that was 12, and I'd lost 80 kilos. I still wasn't very good on a bike, but I'd lost 20 kilos.
So that was the Etape that finished on top of the Semnoz, right?
Yeah, and I finished on top of my back.
All right, it's the first podcast, Pete, so I'm being gentle with you about that particular Etape because I know that. I've never got near you since then, but I comprehensively beat you on that Etape.
So a bunch of the climbs, it's not far from Geneva. It's about 40 kilometers from Geneva. I don't typically ride these climbs because it just takes too much time just to get out to them and everything else. And I've got a lot of other stuff right on my doorstep here, so I don't do them. But I know the area, I know the kind of climbs you get around here, and I've got a friend who's got a training company called Alpine Calls, and they've already gone out and done done the recce because the weather's been great here, and this is
what they say. Good course.
Good course. I think it'll surprise some people. I've already had some comments from friends, who do these things, and they've said, "Oh well, I don't really find it that inspiring." Some people, and I can understand why. If they're coming from abroad, especially, they're kind of looking for these iconic climbs or the big branded climbs that they just want to tick off. The Alpe d'Huez and the Galibier and these extremely, iconic climbs, and I completely get that. Last year was an iconic one with the Col d'Izoard, but this year is going to be tough. And the reason why it's going to be tough, and it's going to be tough for me, and it's going to be tough probably for quite a few mammals, is that there are a lot of steep sections in it. And if you're a rider like me, who's I'm 85 at the minute, which is heavier than I like to be. I want to get to 80, but still at 80 kilos. There's a section here going up to Plateau Glières, which is 11.5% average for 6 kilometers. That's brutal.
Well, look, Pete, I just want to jump in there because 80 kilograms for me is a pipe dream. I was 80 kilograms when I was 13, but I don't know how many years ago. I am a solid 92 kilogram rider when I'm fit. I guess I can go up to kind of 96, 98 kilograms in the off season, inverted commas. So I think I'm more reflective of a proper mammal.
Most people are. Most people.
And if I can do it, I know that it's accessible.
Most. I think most guys, especially. Most mammals are on that side. And even myself, like I'm 6'2" and 80 kilos, I'm still pretty light, and even then 11.5% for 6 kilometers is brutal. Normally, if you do like the stages, in the high Alps, those climbs are sure longer, but they're not as steep as that. They rarely get into double digits for long.
I agree with you to an extent, Pete, but I think that I know that I'm never going to win anything, right? I'm going to go there and I'm just going to have a really good day out. If I'm really fit, because I'm lucky, I kind of carry my weight quite well, if you like. I'm quite powerful when I'm fit up the climbs, although I'm not exceptional. All I'm trying to say is, imagine there are people out there that have never done this before, and I would really like people to experience a sportive of this quality at least once in their kind of cycling career, if you like. It's a fantastic thing to aim for. It is accessible. Don't get hung up on, this 80 kilograms, this 90 kilograms, whatever. If you do the training and you take it seriously, you don't have to be Superman or Superwoman. A fantastic day out in the Alps, in the shadows of the pros, with just an amazing amount of support from the villagers in France, and some absolutely stunning scenery is well within your grasp. So let's not put people off. The Haute route, I'm more inclined to agree with you, but is eminently doable.
Okay. The Etape is doable. It's one day. The Haute route is a different level of foolishness, and I wouldn't advise anyone to take the Haute route on. The Haute route on is kind of their first kind of entry into this kind of stuff. You do the Haute route after you've done a bunch of Etapes and a bunch of Marmottes, and you're feeling kind of like you can take things to the next level. But
yeah, and the Marmot as well is an absolutely fantastic day out. Finishes on what are the climbs on there? It's the so I've got them here actually. It's the Alemont, Col de Grandon, and then it's the Col de Telegraph, Col de Galibier, which is without doubt one of my kind of top 3 climbs. And then Alpe d'Huez. And if you can make Alpe d'Huez by the cutoff time, it's just an iconic climb, that, isn't it? Everyone should do it at least once.
Marmot's a big day. It's 174 kilometers and 5,000 meters of climbing.
It is a big day.
This is 169 kilometers, so basically the same distance. It's 4,000 meters of climbing, so that's effectively Alpe d'Huez knocked off.
It's still quite a long etape though, isn't it? The 3 that I've rode before haven't been that long. I was looking at the distances.
It's a long etape, and it's a slightly annoying etape. Not to put people off either. It's an annoying etape because it's basically a straight line from west to east. So I'm thinking now, where the hell did I put my bloody car? How did I manage this? To be honest, I'm looking at this here and it's looking like a really soft pedal back to Geneva. 34 kilometers back. But yeah, no, I think it's a tasty route. I can see there are already 10,000 riders signed up already.
Still a couple of days left.
People are considering doing it, definitely do it. It's unfortunate that it's on exactly the same day as the Marmot, which I don't know why the organisers of the Marmot have not just done it a week earlier. It's strange because I would have done them both, frankly. I think if it just been the week before. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one, and I'll catch some people out because they don't know the big branded climbs, and there are quite a few climbs climbs. There's like 4 big climbs, so pacing yourself is going to be key, because it's not just a case of saving yourself up for the big one at the end.
Good stuff. All right, well, yeah, exciting and a lot to aim for over winter then, which I guess will form part of your training and leads us on to our next section, which we'll talk about in a minute. So we will be talking about off-season training. How do you maintain your motivation and how do you keep yourself fit and active over the dark winter months? So we'll be right back after this.
You're listening to the MAMIL Sports Cycling Podcast. Our global community is active over all social media, and you can keep up to date with the latest news, features, tech, reviews and interviews on our website, www.mamilsports.com, and by subscribing to our podcast. We'd love to hear from you and share your cycling adventures and achievements with the community, no matter how big or small. If you'd like to be featured as our Mammal of the Month or have an interesting story to share, then get in touch. You can contact us through our website, Facebook, or email mamil@mamilsports.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Ride safe.
Okay, welcome back. You're listening to the MAMIL Sports Podcast. This is part 2 of the podcast, and Bryan and Pete are still with me. We're going to be talking about motivation now and how we maintain cycling motivation in the off-season. So Bryan wrote a very helpful guide recently on the MAMIL Sports website. I'll hand you over to Bryan. Bryan, what should we do? Because I think this is one of my major problems. I am a culprit of the off-season. It destroys my fitness.
Like this, trying to accept that the season's over. I know sort of Pete kind of clings on right to the end and doesn't really want to put the bike away.
No surrender.
Yeah, no surrender to the end. But I think in the off season, it's very specific to every individual. So we couldn't just give this is exactly what you have to do. So you have to find out what works well for you. But I think for everyone, no matter your level, you need to take a step back. Even if you don't feel you need it, maybe 2 months down the line, you'll realise, I wish I'd actually took a proper break. So I'd recommend anywhere from sort of 2 to 4 weeks, probably in the 4 weeks is probably what everyone needs. And like that could be just dropping volume, or for a lot of people, I like to advise them do some cross training or go back to different sports they would have done in the past, whether that be, rowing, running, bit of triathlon or something like that can be quite good. So yeah, it's just about stepping out of the norm. And even if you are still riding the bike, guys that I manage are off season, I tell them to put the numbers away, so no power meter, no heart rate, go out in club runs, meet up with guys, have a bit of fun, hit a few 30s and stuff like that. Gym training obviously is fantastic for a number of reasons, circuit training and different classes, and anything that takes you away from the sort of structured element of cycling, and even more recently with power and heart rate and Strava and all the different things that you sort of immerse yourself in it so deeply. So I definitely recommend. I'm sure when you've done it, you've noticed when you come back after 4 weeks, you've just a new lease of life, like just in terms of your head, never mind your body's physiology.
Yeah, so I didn't have a season anywhere near the degree that Pete did. I did a bit of cycling. I wouldn't say this year I've actually been as active as I wanted to be because of work commitments, but I was in Mallorca in September and had a good blast around there. Really enjoyed it. Came back, put the bike away, and I've been swimming rather for the last couple of weeks, which I've really enjoyed. So I'm getting back on the bike now. I've got Zwift as well, which is fun, really good if it's particularly horrendous outside. So I'm going to start kind of bringing the bike back in a little bit, but just really enjoying kind of mixing up my training. I think for me the main thing over winter, some people might relate to, probably not you, Pete, by the sounds of it, my weight is at risk of just ballooning over winter, with Christmas parties and kind of the rich food that's out there, and there's a lot of entertaining that goes on in kind of working
in fairness,
culture.
I've drank 3 beers while on this podcast, so I am having an off season right now.
Okay. Well, this is your off season, this podcast. What about you, Pete? Then obviously you've been very active till very recently. You just got back from Von 2, although you did do that on your mountain bike. So I guess you are mixing up your training, but you're still in the saddle. But is there any other things? To be honest with you,
I did have an off season, but it was an enforced off season. So I had 4 weeks off due to a painful issue with my posterior, which is a topic which deserves an entire podcast in its own. But
which I do know the details of, but maybe not for this
But anyway,
episode.
it meant that I had to take some time off the bike. And I actually thought back, that 4 weeks off was the longest I've taken from the bike in like 5 years. I'd always gone on holiday and taken my bike on holiday even, or gone and rented a bike. I mean, I remember in 2015 going on, family holidays to Thailand, Easter, to Koh Samui, and hiring a bike and getting up in the morning and riding around through the stray dogs and everything. just nuts stuff. So I didn't have a good year in 2017 in terms of events. I mean, I did Marmot and I did Etape and all the rest, and but I wasn't happy with it. And I actually realized after the end of that 4-week break, it's because I kind of was forcing myself to love the sport.
Yeah. I've really felt that. I mean, when I was training for I did the Marmot and the Etape in a year, which isn't a massive thing, and there'll be people out there that are like, well, that's nothing. But that involved a lot of rides on my own at the time because I wasn't a member of a club, so I was going out for 5-6 hour rides, and you need to mix it up. I think you need to embrace a club run and hang out with your mates and maybe do different types of training, as Brian's saying, because those long solitary miles can. I mean,
absolutely.
Can
like I say, after having 4 weeks for medical reasons off, I realized 2017 wasn't a good year because I effectively been force feeding myself training. I didn't really want to eat it, but I forced myself to do it because I want to do these events. So it's good. No, I've come back, I've done a bit of training, I've just been riding my bike at various paces, taking up a lot of mountain biking. And I've got to say, before I did mountain bike and rode a mountain bike, I was quite derogatory towards mountain bikers, but I've got a newfound level of respect for mountain bikers because I'm sure Brian can talk about this, like people go and ride cross CX, cross country biking in this time of the year. Mountain biking is the same kind of thing. You start to get off the road, you start to do something a bit different, to see new things, because obviously you can get bored riding the same kind of routes, and you start to develop handling skills and things like this, actually, which I can tell you that I did some crazy mountain biking, and the day after I was doing some descending on the road, and my descents on the road were so fast, and I was thinking to myself, I can't even believe how easy this is, because you've got a road, you have good visibility, it's good surface, it's straight, whatever. So yeah, absolutely, I think it's good. And I would love to know, just in terms of from Brian, in terms of your clients, do you have any guys that do the cross country bike?
Yeah,
like cyclocross. Yeah,
there's been a few guys do it. It really depends on the individual, but guys that especially where I'm from, the people I'm working with, like all the top guys, I'd say the 6 top guys in the country on the road now were mountain bikers or downhill mountain bikers, and it shows that a lot of the younger clients I'd work with is like, I'm telling them, it's not even a training session, it's get on your mountain bike, or if you have a cross bike, you can borrow a bike, get around the forest, and at that young age you can learn fundamentals, and the neuromuscular system picks up how to ride a bike and hold it. And that, you can see Sagan, he was a mountain biker, and a whole load of the guys now.
It's the same as Cadell Evans.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And the thing is, it's very good for training young guys because their energy systems at that age in mountain biking get trained very, very hard. So a couple of guys are all downhill mountain bikers, and it's very, very difficult. A max sprint at the start and hammering down a hill, VO2 max training. And when you're young, that's perfect for sort of reaching the full potential of your aerobic system later on.
What about our audience though? What about the MAMIL Sports audience? Because I know that you wrote a good article as well about maintaining fitness over 40. So how would you incorporate that into your off season? So, I mean, what I'm thinking is, I guess, less kind of high impact stuff.
Definitely if you're, a mammal that isn't too confident on the, with his bike handling skills, like Pete said, getting on a mountain bike or doing cross country will help you no end. You might fall off a couple of times, but, it's going to be a lot softer. But as you get older and, if you're going over the 40 bracket, definitely strength training is going to be a lot more important to be able to maintain muscle mass.
And how would you achieve that? Would that be in a HIIT session, which I know that are quite popular at the moment, but would that be a 3 times a week, kind of 40-minute kind of weights workout? Because my problem is if I hit the weights, I get massive very quickly, and I'm not trying to kind of show off, because it really does.
I'd be the same as you. You're probably a bit more of a mesomorph, which just means you can grow muscle quite quickly. But say, for example, you go into the gym now, I would put on maybe 5 kilos instantly. Like as soon as I hit the gym for a week, I'll get 5 kilos heavier, but that's not muscle. Don't worry about that weight gain, because it is really only sort of intermuscular fluid really it's there to grow muscle, but you're really there just getting the activation and getting the muscles moving, if you know what I mean. So definitely over 40 strength training. Say you were doing a leg session, if you hit that once every 5 days or that, that's gonna really help you. Even it's injury prevention for a lot of the time, and sorting out muscular imbalances, which is what puts most people off the bike, with a dodgy knee or their foot or whatever, hip problems and stuff. So the gym can definitely sort that out quite well.
Complete rest from the bike, what would you say? Kind of 4 weeks. When would you start training?
I would probably never say a complete rest from the bike. What I would sort of generally say, it depends on what hours the people have been doing, but if you're maybe doing 10 to 12 hours, you would maybe just do an hour a day. If you can get an hour in of swimming, running, and just have fun like that. I would go back to doing the things that got you into cycling. So for me, that was a club run. So I would go out on the club run and coffee stops and whatnot. And then it's just whenever you feel like you want more, that's then when you sort of come back and you're then focused. If you come back too soon, you'll just not be, focused. You'll be force feeding yourself, like Pete was saying. You're not going to be well up for it. So,
what do you think about they've improved massively. We're very lucky to live in an age of technology. But what do you think about the whole kind of turbo training and Zwift and online racing? Because I've personally find that really helpful. That kind of keeps my motivation.
I think the way Zwift has come on, the technology is unbelievable, and to have races online for motivation is fantastic, and also for people to get access to a training plan relatively easily and affordably is very good. I suppose for the mammals and guys aren't taking it too seriously, it probably serves a really good purpose. But from a coaching perspective, I think a lot of the stuff nowadays is probably, say for guys coming into the sport that haven't a good endurance base, or they haven't been training at all really, and then they come into doing cycling, a lot of the stuff's nearly too hard for sort of long-term development. But in terms of getting you through the winter, I think it's fantastic. Definitely
good stuff. All right, well I'll see you on Watopia then, on Zwift Island. do you use it yourself? I mean, what about yourself, Bryan? You're coaching a lot, but I think I know that you were trying to get back into cycling.
I got injured, and my knee was the problem, and after going through a load of physical therapists to find what the issues was, and after about 6 months I'd lost all love for it, so just focused on the bike shop at the time and the coaching business. But I've kind of sorted all the issues out, which was really quite simple to fix whenever you meet the right practitioner. So I've found a new love for the bike, and I actually bought a Cannondale Slate. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's basically like an like an all-road bike or something like that.
I know this one, like an adventure bike, basically.
Gravel bike. It's got like a left. Yeah, it's cool. Like so. I would always train very specific and on my own and stick into training zones. But I bought this bike just to sort of ride around on and hammer through forests and stuff. So it's and as Pete said, see getting through the forest, it sort of gives you that sort of scariness of nearly falling off a couple of times. So you learn new limits, I suppose. But
that's I know what I was going to say about the mountain bike, and it's like it's totally like pushing your comfort zone, and then you realize after you've done a few of these scary, like full suspension open, basically plummets off a mountain, then if you go down to descend just a normal road, what used to scare you and the speed you used to take corners at, you're going like, this is actually not scary relative to what I did yesterday.
Exactly, yeah. I coached one of the top downhillers. He was a World Cup downhiller, and he transitioned over the road, and he was telling me how scared he was on the time trial bike doing 30 mile an hour down a main road. I was like, went off cliffs in Chile and whatnot. But I suppose it's all perspective on speed. And,
wow.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's great, Bryan. Thank you very much. Some really interesting information there. Certainly sounds as though you and Pete are definitely big fans of the mountain bike as well. I might have to get one myself. So people can go and check you out. Check out your coaching website at www.cyclecoaching.com. UK.com.
I actually have a new page on there called Ask the Coach. So basically, if you have any questions or whatnot, fire a question in, I'll get back to you. And if it is a question that's been asked before, it'll already be there for you. So, that could be things like, I'm feeling tired, should I train, or anything, literally anything, I'll be able to get back to you. And I suppose as well, get in touch with MAMIL Sports if there's anything you want us to talk about specifically in training.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are looking to share the stories and get to know our audience and our members and the community a lot more, and maybe feature a few people on the podcast in the future. So, if you're doing something for the first time, your first sportive, if you've recently got into cycling, if you've had a complete complete lifestyle change, if you're in an interesting part of the world or doing an event that no one's really heard of before or whatever, I'd love to hear from you, and I know that the team would as well. So you can email mamil@mamilsports.com, MAMIL@mamilsports.com, and we'll get back to you. And, we really look forward to interacting with you lots more in the future. So we'll be doing these initially, monthly, and depending on the season and, what's going on, we might do them a bit more frequently. I might pop up occasionally doing the odd interview if there's anybody out there that's particularly keen to be interviewed as well. But me, Pete and Bryan will be meeting once a month with a Peroni or a glass of wine or whatever, and having a bit of chat about the issues of the last month. So glad that you could join us today, wherever you are in the world. I know that we've got people that are part of the community from Africa and America and Tasmania, Australia and Asia, all over the place. So you're all very welcome within the MAMIL Sports community. And we'll see you next month. Until then, ride safe. Thanks very much.